So let's continue with the nature of man. Last class we looked at how Sikhism believes in the equality of all beings, as well as that they say that while all creatures are equal, what makes humans unique is there are two things that make humans unique, right? What is that? Sentience as well as the consciousness. So today let's take a look at what is the purpose of human nature. So what do you all feel from all that you all have seen so far? What do you think is the purpose of human nature? Any guess would do, based on what we have learned about the Sikh values, about the principles, etc. So what is the purpose of a human being? Okay, so maybe to praise God could be. Okay, let's put this. Anything else? Okay, serving others. Compassion, then harmony or happiness. Happiness, then unbiasedness, peace, fulfillment. Any other things? Purpose. Okay, so these are some of the things which we may think of when it comes to what is the purpose of the human nature in general, right? So now, when it comes to Sikhism, they say that the essential nature, okay, of the human person is divine. And humans are believed so here when we speak about the human nature, it is divine in the sense that humans are the carriers of the divine spark, which in other words is also the soul. Okay, so here we see that, and this soul is part of Waheguru, the eternal one. So in this way we see that the human soul is a part of the eternal one, and therefore by possessing the soul, each one of us also possess the divine spark. So in a way, yes, it could be something spiritual. Now, ultimately, as we have seen in all other religions as well, the soul is, by nature, how is the soul? Is it pure, impure? It is pure, okay? So, it is pure. And yeah, that is there. But when we look at with regards to the purity, okay, we see that by nature the soul is pure, and it tends to get entangled to the material world by what ways do you think that the soul can get entangled to the material world? Okay, something that is spiritual, how does it get entangled with the worldly things or with the material world? Okay, attachments is one thing. And attachments to what? So in a way, One is to attachment to worldly desires, or you can say pleasures. Any other way how the soul can get attached or soul can get entangled in the material world?
Thinking that forgetting that the soul is dying. Thinking that
What is that called?
ignorance.
Okay. Through ignorance. Is there any other thing? Okay, also through the ego. When everything is centered around the person, I, in that way we see that the soul tends to get, in a way, entangled with the material world. Okay, so ego would refer to the full centered around oneself. Okay, so when everything is centered around oneself, okay, you are not able to see the others. You become the center of everything, and everything is based on I this, I that. In that case, all these things of serving, compassion, harmony, happiness, then slowly tend to get affected, because everything is done for your sake, not for the others. So in a way, the principles which we have seen of serving others, of equality, tend to get compromised. Yeah. Now we see that the primary purpose of life is to realize this unity with Waheguru, or the Eternal One, and also to overcome the illusion of separateness. So that means through attachment with the material world, we tend to create a kind of an illusion of, or we tend to move away from this unity of the Waheguru. Something similar to the Christian concept of attachment to the worldly things. Okay, so the more you get attached to the worldly things, the more you tend to move away from God. So in this way we see that the primary purpose is to realize that one is united through the soul, because in a way the soul is part of the Waheguru, and then ultimately to overcome this illusion of separateness. So this involves that the world is transient, that nothing is permanent in the world, and therefore true essence of life is spiritual. So moving away from the material aspects. Okay, so that the true essence of the human life is spiritual. So here we see that there is a movement away from the material. So with this being said, how do you think can people be saved according to Sikhism? Okay, grace is one. Then what else is required? Okay, meditation. Anything else? salvation. How do you gain salvation? Yeah, effort and grace. But apart from that, what else do you need? So grace is from God. When it comes to effort, it is from our side. So therefore, from our side, what else is required to be done? Okay, so reading of the text could be one thing. Then anything else? Routines, good things, hymns. Okay, reciting of hymns also, doing good deeds could be one of the things. So let's take a look at this. So when we speak about the path to salvation, first and foremost, it is about coming out of the cycle of birth, death and rebirth. And this can be broken through spiritual discipline, devotion to Waheguru and righteous living. That means also doing good deeds. Now, one thing that is important to see that Sikhism does not advocate, or it does not say that you need to have extreme asceticism, neither do you have to renounce the world.
Although Waheguru is the soul of what is it?
Eternal one, the God. We said the soul is a part of the eternal one, and therefore since we possess the soul, therefore we are connected with the eternal one in that sense. So therefore, to come out of this cycle, you do not need to have extreme ascetic practices. You need not do those fasting, those extreme penances, how it was thought of earlier. Now when we see in those days, there was a lot of stress on this asceticism. That means really punishing yourself, okay, through rigorous practices, okay, in order to gain liberation. And therefore, when we look at the life of certain figures like Buddha, as we see when he realized that this asceticism, extreme asceticism was not useful, he moved away from it. But we see that the others felt that he was not following it, and as a result of it would not achieve liberation. So they thought that he had given up. Okay, because in those days, this was the only way to gain liberation. That was thought. Next also, you need not move out of the world in order to gain liberation. Okay, though you are supposed to, in a way, focus on the spiritual, you should not be attached to the material world, but that does not mean that you completely give up any material things. Okay. So here the whole focus is avoiding the attachments. In a way, yes. We could. So for example, you have the things with you, but at the same time you are not fully attached to it. In the sense, it should not be that you cannot live without it. Okay, it is required. You use it as much as it helps.
Can we also bring the idea of indifference here?
Yes, could bring. So in the sense, as much as it helps, right now, what we have in our term, tantum quantum. So as long as it helps you, use it, but at the same time you don't are fully attached to it. Now another important
Allah, about extreme asceticism, it is not needed, it says. But is it important for the process like Buddha had gone through, Jesus also went through the desert, Ignatius also went through that extreme asceticism, and then he said it's not needed. But then is it good for the process? Even if we see Muhammad, he was in desert for 40 days, extreme. So isn't it necessary of the process to achieve that kind of enlightenment? Though they say that it is not needed later on, but then the process is it needed?
Now, the way we can look at it is, one way is looking at it is, now in those days, that was the way of following it. So therefore, everybody who had that goal of attaining it would have used it, okay? Because, see, in those days, the whole concept was that the soul is captured in the body, and as a result, the soul needs to be freed from the body. And how do you do that? By inflicting punishment on the body. So that was the whole understanding during that time. Now, there were some who realized that it was not useful, because if you look at the body as an extension, okay, of the soul, in the sense you are able to reach out through the body, okay, then you also require the body to help you gain that, once again, that spiritual contact or the unity with God. Okay, so in that way, that whole thing about extreme asceticism was this thing. Now, some practices still continue. They still have some practices, but the extremes are avoided. Okay, in both cases. So in a kind of a balanced, moderate way is what they would follow. Okay, so here we see that what it emphasizes. Okay, so we said we avoid extreme asceticism, we avoid complete renunciation of the world. They focus on a more balanced life. Okay, as we have said, avoiding attachment, using things as much as it helps, and also invites people to be socially responsible. Okay, because we see that social responsibility was something which even the gurus emphasized a lot in their lives. And they also, one of the ways is also by meditating on the divine name. Next is Nam Japa. Okay. From this term itself, what understanding can one get? Okay, so Nam is name. Name, and Japa would be a kind of chanting or reciting. So in other words, we could call this as the meditation on the divine name, which in a way is also a constant remembrance of Waheguru. Now, we also have a similar kind of thing in Catholicism, right? Do we have something like this?
Yes.
Meditating on the name? Okay. What do you think is the purpose of it? Why should we meditate on the name, or why do some people meditate on the name? Is it useful?
Eliminate the distraction and focus.
Okay, so let's put it here. So we say focus Any other reason why meditating on the name is considered to be useful? Okay, a little bit more on that, emptying your mind. Exactly what? Centering, focus. Yeah, emptying the mind is there, but what exactly, if you can just elaborate a little bit?
We fill our mind with what we are saying. So, fill it with God rather than.
Okay, so in this way we see also that here emptying in the sense would be that as you said, you empty of whatever is there inside, impurities and all, the thoughts and all the other intentions, and then as you basically fill yourself, as you meditate on the divine, you also are then filled with the positive kind of energy. Now, also, another important reason for this is to transcend worldly attachments. Because we see that as you are filling yourself with the divine, as you're filling yourself with the positive energy, you can shed your ego and you can then achieve oneness with God. So in this way we see that the whole concept of I, so when you're focusing on meditating on the name, that whole concept of I, that me being the center, tends to go away. And then ultimately when that happens, you are able to be one with others. Okay, you are able to care for the others, you are able to show concern, etc. And as a result of it, you are able to achieve this contact with God or oneness with God. So that is why we see that for them, remembering the name by meditating on the divine name was considered to be very useful. Next, you also have the Kirat Karni and the One Chakna. That is, so Kirat Karni would refer to honest labor and Vand Chakna would refer to sharing with others. Now, when it comes to honest labor, do we find it elsewhere? Honest labor, when we speak about honest labor or honest work, is it found in some other? Okay. Okay, in Jainism we also see that. Also, is it there in some of the ways? In the 8 ways do we find in Buddhism? Right living, okay. So in this way we see that all these, in a way, every kind of religion or a way of life will focus on these two. Honest labor, that means in our dealing with others, okay, and also this whole aspect of sharing. So here we see that this is important for moral and ethical living. And therefore honest labor or honest work would mean using proper means to earn one's living rather than doing it at the expense of others, or doing it by achieving it by engaging in some malpractices, etc. Now we see that by living righteously, by serving humanity, and remembering the Eternal One, they can achieve spiritual progress and come closer to liberation. And therefore the last one we come to is divine grace. So here we see that human effort is necessary, but at the same time, liberation comes only through divine grace.
So, you said that living righteously like humanity and remembering Waheguru will bring them
Closer to liberation. Okay, so in this way we see that though human effort is also necessary, but ultimately divine grace is something that helps the person to attain liberation. And therefore we see that it is only God's grace that can help the soul to break free from samsara. And in this way it can help them to come closer to liberation. Now we move to some of the symbols or the objects which are very dear to Sikhism. Okay, so from your rough general knowledge, do you have any idea of some things that are always there with them? Okay, the sword we would say, okay, or the kirpan, anything else? Okay, turban, yes, but not exclusively in one of these 5 Ks. They have something called as the 5 Ks. Okay, so one is the Khalsa is there, but then this is in a way, this was the ones who were in the Khalsa. Okay, for them it was kind of their articles of faith which they wear. Okay, so let's so these are called as the Panch Kakars. That means the 5 emblems or 5 symbols or articles of faith. Now these are worn by those who are in the Khalsa. Okay, and therefore each of these begin with K. Now we see that these 5 emblems are not rooted, or we don't find any basis for them in the Guru Granth Sahib. Okay, but their significance became kind of stable or solidified during the creation of the Khalsa. By whom? Who was instrumental in creating the Khalsa? Which Guru? Okay, so Guru Gobind Singh. So these items or these emblems in a way represent Sikh identity, ideas, as well as values. So, where do we find this? This is found in the Rahat Namaz, which is the code of conduct which was written by the contemporaries of Guru Gobind Singh. So the thing is, though it is not per se written in scripture, but these are other writings in which we find them, but still we see that in our understanding of Jesus, we also kind of tend to use this, okay, to show the humanness of Jesus. So similarly here, though these 5 symbols, okay, or these 5 articles of faith are not in the Guru Granth Sahib, we see that they are then written by the contemporaries of Guru Gobind Singh so that they can help to portray the Sikh identity, ideas and values. So among this, the first is the kesh, that means uncut hair. Okay, that is where the turban comes in. Okay, so we see that this is considered one of the most important among the 5. And they are, in a way, they must let the hair grow naturally. So this, in a way, we see that includes the head hair as well as the beard. Now, when it comes to this whole practice, okay, of keeping these unshorn or not cutting the hair, this in a way comes from the gurus during those days, okay, not only Guru Gobind Singh but also some of the earlier gurus. And it is said that it was also a common tradition among certain Hindu ascetic sects. Okay, among some sects it was a common tradition. Now, why is this important? First, we see that by not cutting the hair, they accept God's will as well as the natural form given by the Creator. So this in a way symbolizes commitment to living in harmony both with nature as well as with divine will or order. So that means you commit yourself to live according to the divine order, divine will, and also according to how your natural course takes place in life. And therefore this in a way for them is a connection to their spiritual heritage as the gurus also had this, as well as their identity. Now, what is the significance, okay, of this non-cutting of hair in the Sikh identity? So here we see that this is a visible sign of dedication to the Khalsa. And it is said that a baptized Sikh, the one in the Khalsa, if he cuts the hair, he is considered as a papit, or what we would normally call as a sinner. Okay, so this basically also goes back to their cultural significance of keeping the uncut hair. Now, this is also seen as a sign of humility and submission to God's will. In the sense, that means as we said, it's the natural course, like how the life goes on like. So for example, so by not cutting your hair, you allow it to grow the way God has planned it for you. So you don't kind of make changes in what God has ultimately this thing. So if He wishes for it to kind of stop growing or stop or falling, then you again accept it as God's command. So rather than making modifications to it, you allow it to take its natural course.
In that case,
We'll come to that later. Why certain things are there and why these are the only important ones and why others are not considered. Okay?
mention of sex is that only certain people
No. It is taken from the Hindu, certain Hindu sects is to follow it. That is the whole connection of that. Okay, so in this way, we see that this in a way becomes a visible sign of distinguishing the members of the Khalsa from the other communities. So as we said, this is restricted only to the Khalsa. Okay. Then as you come to the other communities, you may find differences here and there. Okay, so we'll stop here for today, and in the next class we'll take a look at the other 4 elements. Okay, so thank you.